Hi everyone, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface, or as the subtitles like to say, hi everyone, Eat Ass here from HeelvsBabyface. Never change, subtitles. Never change. Okay. A quick apology. I do not know how long this video is going to go on for. So if it goes on for a little bit, mea culpa. But there's things that really need to be discussed here, particularly in this article, because what happens when your show burns to the ground and then you do an interview afterwards? Well, if you're Chris Chibnall, Jodie Whitaker, and executive producer Matt Stevens, just pretend it never happened. Just pretend it never happened. Stick to your own narrative. Stay in your own bubble. Because this article here not only shows that they don't care what you think. They don't care what you think. It also shows that they just don't get the show. But there again, entertaining people is not their priority. It's pushing their ideology. Because that is the current day BBC. And it's all on display in this video. In this article, sorry. And in this video, technically. So this is an interview with the Sydney Morning Herald. I don't know if it's meant to be an objective publication, but it's not. It's clearly not. It's very biased. It's essentially allowing Chibnall, Stevens, and Whitaker to explain their concept of the show.
Which is trash.
Just FYI, which is trash. And we're going to have a look, because we got two graphs. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I can't take credit. I didn't do them myself. But there are two graphs in this episode, which we're going to see some very interesting statistics as regards to Doctor Who. Because there's a narrative which is trying to be pushed that ratings are fine, Doctor's fine, it's not in any trouble. We're going to have a look at that. So, by the time the final credits rolled on the 12th season of the rebooted Doctor Who, audiences had met a second female Doctor. Wrong! Wrong. I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but wrong. By time the credits rolled, we had actually been introduced to 6 female Doctors. Admittedly, only 2 of them opened their mouths. One of them barely, because they were just a plot device placed in the show to tell audiences, oh, just shut up and take the show. Just shut up. Don't worry about history. Don't worry about all of that. Just shut up. We're going to push this. That's why the Joe Doctor's there. But we had little black baby girl, Doctor number 1. Then they regenerated straight away into Asian girl. Then they regenerated after that straight into white girl. And then we had a couple of men. Ew! Next. And then 4th regeneration into a Asian Pakistani girl. Maybe Indian. Then the next one we had, of course, was Dr. Joe. Then Whitaker. So by the end of the series, we had 6 female Doctors. Not trying to be nitpicky, just making sure you got your facts straight. Because the show was very keen to ram that down our throats. The regenerated form of the show's supervillain, the Master, yeah, pretty good. Sasha was pretty good. And returned to the home planet of the Time Lords for an epic finish. If by epic finish you mean complete shite, you're correct. Which essentially wiped the show's history clean. Correct. It burnt the show to the ground. Scorched earth policy. It dismantled 57 years of history. No respect for it whatsoever. So I'm glad that you recognise that. I'm glad that you recognise that. Ay, ay, ay. not just any old Time Lord. The Doctor, played by a long line of actors from William Hartnell in 63 to Jodie Whittaker in present day, was revealed to be the timeless child. Correct. Not only has the history of the Doctor been wiped, scorched, burnt down, but the name of the Doctor has also been answered as well. The timeless child. Nice one, Chips. An extra-dimensional orphan whose regenerative, easy for me to say, properties were stolen by the white man, Gallifreyans, slip of the tongue. Gallifreyans, in their quest to culturally appropriate, to become near immortal Time Lords. Well, that's another massive plot hole, really, is they have the secret of everlasting life. It was only Tecteun. Do you want to say anything, Tecteun? No, Tecteun doesn't get to say shit. None of the early Doctors get to say shit, because there isn't a story to be told there. There's only shut up and look at our colours and races and genders. Because this has been done in bad faith, because the BBC are embarrassed by 12 white dudes being the Doctor before they got to Whittaker. Tecteun has the secret to immortality, but chose to restrict it to 12. However, they can go beyond that should they wish to. So they're not near immortal. They can be immortal. For some reason, she restricted it. It also explains the show's executive producer. Explains the show's, executive producer. The culmination of a storyline that was hatched at the beginning of Whittaker's historic journey as the first female Doctor in the show's almost 60-year history. This isn't a controversial statement I'm going to say now, but it will be deemed to be. I don't think it works with a female Doctor. I don't think it works. The show had a lot of years with a male Doctor, and then they decided to change the gender. I wasn't opposed to it, because I thought the show could do with some sort of mixing up. But I think it's perfectly clear from this regeneration that it doesn't work. Now, that could be Whittaker, and some people would debate that, and that's absolutely fine. But the dynamic of the show has been completely altered, and the show hasn't embraced that at all. Because now, instead of having a female Doctor and using that to potentially tell different stories, we now have a female Doctor that just goes around emasculating people, belittling people, and being spiteful. So it just doesn't work. Because if that's what you think empowerment is, then you haven't got a clue whatsoever. But that's the BBC. It's all about show and not tell. Because they are superficial. Everything they do is superficial. It has no depth whatsoever. No true meaning whatsoever. We just need to show diversity, pat on the back. We don't need to explain why it makes the show better, how it enhances the product. We just say, hey, if you are X colour or X race or X gender, now you can relate because we put X colour, X race, X gender on the screen. Because that's the way they think people can only relate to a show. A show which has been going for 57 years. A show which has been going this is its 57th year. And has been beloved by people for nearly 6 decades, in the last couple of years, since Chibs and Whitaker took over, they now have to try and explain to you that you can't relate to the Doctor anymore because they've only been a white man. Nearly 6 decades. Loved by men, women, people of different colours, races. But Chibs and Whitaker, they need to explain to you how you can't relate to the Doctor because they've only been white men up until now. Ladies and gentlemen, current day BBC. Oh, sweet Jesus Christ. We had a conversation right from the start where we went, here is the trajectory of your Doctor. Stop right there. Let's have a trajectory look at the Doctor, shall we? So let's get to the first graph. These green lines that you can see are the trends in viewership for the respective Doctors. Eccleston, you can see here, only got 1 season. So we had a big start, and then that's the trend, and that's the final trend. Okay, so that's the viewership trend, and that's the final trend. David Tennant, he went up. Throughout his run and his specials, he had a trend of upwards. Same with Matt Smith. Although his first season dipped a bit, his trends and the 50th, sort of that. Good. Even Capaldi, who people love to put up against Jodie Whittaker, and will do that again with the second graph, only had a very slight downward trend. Only had a slight downward trend. And then Whittaker, oh, her trend's off a fucking cliff. That's where her trend is. Off a cliff. So, yeah, trends are good. Because Chibnall bet everything on an anomalous rating. And this was an anomalous rating because you can see from the second episode on how it really starts to trend. But people tuned in for curiosity purposes. Why wouldn't you? This is the first time there's been a female Doctor. How does a female Doctor work comparative to a male Doctor? Does the show still work? Does it make the show better? Does it make the show worse? People tuned in for curiosity purposes, and Chibnall bet everything on that. And lost. Because there to here is what people truly think. And they think this show is falling off a cliff. And that's why you have that. Because Chibs and Whittaker's run has been a complete lack of fun. Has just been a lecture. But I think more importantly, forget all the woke stuff. It's been boring. Really, really boring. Okay, let's get back. Let's get back to this. Chris Chibnall says, sitting down for a post-mortem conversation with Whittaker and co-executive producer Matt Strevens, not Stevens, do beg your pardon. This is the journey you will go on while you are the Doctor. We talked about timing and where things would play in your journey across your role. That's fine. That's fine. But you have to be aware of how your product is being received. And you have to take away the anomalous first episode rating and really start to pay attention to the trend in how people are watching your season. But he didn't. He bet everything on the first one. That's all still in play, Chibnall adds. We knew what we wanted to do last year. We knew that we'd be doing this, what we'd be doing this year would definitely be entirely different because also, partly, it's about the 13th Doctor. No! No, Chibs! You're wrong! You're wrong. This isn't the 13th Doctor. Whittaker is not the 13th Doctor. She's approximately the 65,000th Doctor. Somebody kind of worked it out, give or take. Based off the length of time of the discovery of the timeless child to today, and working out a rough average lifespan of the Doctor, she's the 65,000th-ish, I believe. Doctor. So she's not the 13th Doctor. You burnt that to the ground. You burnt it to the ground. The 65,000th Doctor's time on the show. We wanted to feel like the series was accessible to everybody. Whatever episode they dropped in. That was really, really important. Well, in Whitaker's first season, I dropped out after 2 episodes. I was bored off my tree. Bored off my tree. After the Ghost Monument, I was done. It was so boring. And then when I saw you were going to Rosa the next episode, I thought, it's okay, Chibs. I see exactly what your plan is. I see exactly where you are. And I'm out. I'm out. Because I don't need some out of touch, far left crazy psycho lecturing to me. One of the early criticisms of the Whitaker era was that the series did not feature classic monsters. In her second season as the Doctor, that strategy was flipped on its head, and episodes have featured the return of the Master, played by Sacha Darwin, a cameo from time agent Jack Harkness, that was probably filmed about 2 weeks before the release of that episode, and a storyline entangling the Time Lords with one of the show's iconic classic monsters, the Cybermen. This is great what Chib says next. Chibnall says the most challenging thing about dealing with criticism over the lack of classic monsters was knowing that Whitaker's second season would feature them heavily. Oh, it's our fault. It's our fault. It's our fault that Chibnall didn't feature any of the Doctor Who villains in the first season. Because we needed to be told that racism is bad, okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. You want to create appetite and hunger. No, you want to create interest and excitement, but never mind. Stephen Moffat, the preceding producer, had brilliantly done these kind of great big monster episodes in Peter Capaldi's last season as the Doctor. So it's always about how you are creating different parameters for each series. Well, that's quite interesting because the major villain of Moffat's last run with Capaldi was the Cybermen and the Master. And then your plan, when you said it was the plan from day one to have the major monsters in season 2, was to have the Cybermen and the Master. I'm going to press X to doubt, Chibs. I'm going to press X to doubt that you ever had a clue. Is that okay? Because who would be stupid enough to say, well, the previous producer, showrunner, has just run his last major storyline with the Master and the Cybermen. I'm going to do exactly the same in my second season. So I'm pressing X to doubt. And I'm calling you a complete bullshit artist. If that's okay with you. One of the other key story elements in the season was the introduction of the hitherto unseen previous Doctor. Which one? There's loads of them now. In the form of actress Jo Martin. Though never explicit... Don't worry about this next bit. It's completely irrelevant. It's just speculation. It was bigger... This is Whitaker. This is it, folks. Well, first of all, the Jo Doctor was only brought in to tell people to shut up. shut up and don't worry that we're just burning everything down to the ground. Don't think about it. Don't worry about it. We're going to burn everything down to the ground, but don't worry about it. That's why the Joe Martin Doctor's there. Okay. But this is Whitaker. This is Whitaker showing she ain't got a clue. It was bigger than just another character, and I don't think Joe would mind me saying, but the read-through was really emotional, Whitaker says. Not in the sense of crying, just in the sense that for the two of us, when we sat next to each other and, they say, your names and who you play, it's an incredible thing to share. Two female doctors side to side. That's, ladies and gentlemen, I need the bully hunters. I should put the bully hunters. That's what this show's about for the BBC now. It's not about entertaining stories. It's not about excitement and fun and getting lost in the escapism and wonder of adventures in time and space. It's about putting a woman next to a black woman, having a black baby woman to an Asian woman to a white woman to a Pakistani woman. That's what the BBC's about. Because in 6 decades of the show, Whitaker and Chibs only just decided to tell us that we can't relate to the Doctor unless we see the United Colours of Benetton because he's a white man. I'm glad you sorted that out. Sorry, I had to go back to that one because it's just so laughable. My cat's just walked in the room. She's going to start barking at me for treats. You're going to have to wait, Pookie. You're going to have to wait, darling. Daddy's at work. So yes, great. That's great. That's great, Whitaker. I mean, it's not as if just a few years prior we had the 50th anniversary where we had David Tennant and Matt Smith next to each other with also the great and late John Hurt all playing the Doctor and the Doctor. No, it was about sitting at you two women's next to each other and sniffing each other's farts. Doctor to Doctor transitions in a series are not usually so intimate. In the classic Doctor Who series, actor Colin Baker refused to film a regeneration scene to become actor Sylvester McCoy. A double was issued instead. I believe the double was actually Sylvester McCoy. That's because Colin Baker was fired. Essentially fired as the Doctor. Because the head of the BBC, who'd just taken over, Michael Grade, didn't like him as the Doctor and didn't like the show. And was looking for any excuse to get rid of the show. But he said, if you want me to keep it on, first of all, you're going to have to get rid of Colin Baker. So that's why Colin Baker was sacked. Sylvester McCoy took over. The ratings were dipping. Michael Grade used that as his perfect excuse to get rid of the show he never liked. Whitaker did not meet her predecessor, Peter Capaldi, until months after the crossover episode had aired. I wouldn't have either. I mean, Capaldi's class. He's a class act. I love the man. And I loved his Doctor. I think he had some very hard material to work with. But his acting in season 10 saved it for me. Not only that, he was supported brilliantly by Michelle Gomez as Missy. Absolutely incredible actors. And also, I didn't think Bill was that bad a companion. I think she was a pretty good actress, actually. And I think she was one of the most down-to-earth companions we'd had for a while. She just had the clause that she had to say I'm gay every fucking episode that she was in, because that's the BBC nowadays, you know? Whenever I see any of my gay friends, they just always remind me that they're gay. Constantly. Oh, hi, Az, how you doing? I'm gay. Oh, I forgot. Thank you. Thank you for constantly reminding me. Because that's the BBC and that's how they have to virtue signal. But in terms of acting, I don't think the episodes that they had were too great to work with. But they were awesome as actors and they carried it through. Because they're class, professional, wonderful actors. Particularly Capaldi and Michelle Gomez. So if I was Capaldi and I was forced out of my job because Chibnall wouldn't take the role unless he got a female doctor. And when you had planned to stay on for 2 more seasons, and then you had the show that you've always wanted to play the Doctor in taken away from you because of some virtue signalling prick, I would more than forgive him for not being in a position to want to ingratiate Chibs in any way, shape or form. I'm not saying that's the way it went down. I'm just saying maybe I'm just a bit more vindictive. I don't know. But Capaldi is a beautiful class act. And I love him. And I loved his Doctor. We're not on set at the same time for those regeneration moments, Whitaker said. Obviously, it's happened before in different ways, but for it to happen for her in this unexpected way for her character, but also to have such a kick-ass character to bat off. Dr. Joe, kick-ass. Right. The character that was only brought in to tell people, don't worry, don't think about the fact we're just tearing your show down. Where do you fit into this, Joe? I don't know. I'm just here to tell you, don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Don't worry about it. God, I know this video is getting on. I'm sorry, but again, so much I need to get off my chest. Stay angry, folks. Stay angry. And it be rug pulling in a way that isn't neat. It was wonderful to play. Sure. Whatever you need to say to get your pie. Though the Joe Doctor only made a handful of appearances. No, wrong. She made 2 appearances. Not a handful. 2. A couple. Might sound nitpicky, but don't try and make it something it isn't. A couple. She was treated, Whitaker adds, like any actor who's black in the BBC, taking on the role permanently. She's a doctor and she's got her own costume. Everything about the process was the same. My costume was collaborative. Her costume was collaborative. There was less build-up in the sense of it didn't start happening however many months before, but it was still the same respect and process to who you're playing. Yeah, cosplay doctor and a cosplay doctor. One of the most complex dances to be danced in Doctor Who is between the story elements the audience claim they want and the story elements they actually want. This is the beaut. This is the beaut. Let's tell them what they want. Let's tell them what we want. Now, this is where, when you're not doing something for the right reasons, really comes into effect. Because one of the criticisms, of course, of Whitaker's first season, was no major Doctor Who villains in the series. So putting known villains into the second season isn't we're listening to the fans if the stories you're telling are shit. You're not appeasing the fans. You're not saying, hey, we gave you what you wanted. You don't know what you want. Anyone can plonk a Dalek or a Cyberman or a Silurian into an episode, but the episode still has to be well written, well acted, fun and entertaining. Which this series, and what I saw of the last series, because I sure as hell ain't watching the other episodes, and you're not going to bully me into it either, folks, don't even think about it, aren't. In shows with passionate fandoms which would run the gamut from Doctor Who and Star Trek to Star Wars, oh look, destroyed, and even the new reboot of Dracula. Who the fuck cares about Dracula? Audiences can pivot quickly from demands for more and criticisms of too much. Right, it's the fans' fault. Blame the fans. I'm going to blame Chibs, if that's all right. I'm going to blame Chibs' horrific writing. I'm going to blame Chibs' pathetic storytelling. I'm going to blame Chibs' pathetic development of character, if you don't mind, and not the fans. I think it sort of cleaves to the basic principle we have, and I've had on the show, but I think we all have, is you have a vision for what you want to do while you're on the show. Whether you're the doctor, whether you're the producer, whether you're the writer, and you see that vision out, says Strevens. That's fine to have a vision of what you want to do. That's fine to say, this is where we want to go from start to finish. But if it's rejected by the audience, you've got to be malleable enough to change your course. I just want to bring this back up. That is the trend. That is the trend. Off a cliff. Forget that. That's your trend. Your true trend. This is your true trend. Because this first episode can now be taken into consideration because it's a second season and she's bedded in. But this is anomalous. And your trend goes wah. And this really goes wah. So if you are unbudging, then it's your own fault. And further proof of unbudging is right here. In terms of external opinions, it's not a democracy, Chibnall added. We make the show we want to make. We don't care what you think. We have your license fee money. We're not held accountable to you because you got to pay it. Because 99% probably of the British public don't realise that you can exclude yourself if you don't watch terrestrial television. It's not like the US or other channels where they rely on advertising. And if your show is not being well received in terms of viewership and people stop watching it, then advertisers start applying pressure to that channel. And then that channel applies the pressure to the showrunners of that show. Why are we losing viewers? What are you doing that's making us lose viewers? You're losing us advertising revenue. And if the showrunner doesn't have the right answers, the shows get cancelled and something else comes along. But the BBC, they got your money. They got your money. And I've heard Nerdrotic say this, and I absolutely agree. The BBC isn't sat there thinking, do you know something? This isn't being taken well by the British public, and the American audience has fallen off. That's dead. 374,000 viewers for the final episode. That's dead. We need to think of a way to really revitalise the show, to make Jodie a likeable doctor, to place a companion with her that's going to be relatable to the common person, that they can see the wonders of the universe. We need to make these changes. No, the BBC is sat there going, look at these racists and bigots. Look at them. Ugh. They don't understand how progressive we're being. They don't understand what greatness we're doing and retconning the history of Doctor Who and wiping those 12 nasty white men off the planet. That's what the BBC's truly doing, because they got your money and they don't care. The BBC is now partisan. It's not objective, and it should be objective. And it's not. So fuck the BBC and fuck the license fee and cancel it. And I tell you what, if Boris Johnson decriminalises the non-payment of license fee by 2022, the BBC are fucked. Because people will just cancel their licence. Period. Can't prosecute me for doing it. Bye. license fees will be gone by the millions. And then the BBC really will be up shit creek, and they only have themselves to blame. Ay. And the conversation around what fans want and what audiences want, all that kind of stuff, you just have to trust yourself as a program. He says it a little bit more diplomatically than, in terms of external opinions, it's not a democracy. We make the show we want to make, as the showrunner Chris Chibnall said. But it's still the same line. We make the show we want to make. Strevens now points out that he doesn't understand the character of the Doctor at all. In a late scene in the season where companion Graham is confessing his fear to the Doctor, and she responds by saying only that she's thoroughly awkward. I'm thoroughly awkward. Some people go, I just wanted her to say it's going to be all right. And you go, yes, you do want that, but you don't necessarily need that. Strevens added, it's a moment for the Doctor to show she's not human. Capaldi was one of the most standoffish Doctors we've had. Certainly the most standoffish Doctor in New Who. He didn't want to hug Kara. He didn't want to hug people. He wasn't tactile. He was very blunt. When he was going on a rant, somebody said, who are you? And Clara quickly says, I'm his carer. And he replies, yes, she's my carer, so I don't have to. By the way, great line, Moffat. That is a great line. But when it came to the crunch, when it came to the companion needing to know the Doctor was there, he was fucking there! In Deep Breath, where the Doctor is still going through his regenerative cycle, and he's still muzzy-headed and fuzzy and all over the place and a little bit crazy. When they go to the restaurant and they're taken down, and then the automations start to come to life, the robots which are put together by human parts, and the Doctor goes away to the other side and shuts the door, and then he says to Clara, I'm sorry, and runs away. And Clara thinks he's abandoned her, and she is scared out of her wits. And she's not afraid to admit that. And when she's been confronted by the Major One, and she says, oh, if you're trying to scare me, you're doing a good job. You are scaring me. But if I know the Doctor, if I know that person, then I know that he's right here beside me. And he was. He was. He'd taken the face off another person, put it on, and assumed the position. He was there to support her when she needed it, because he's the fucking Doctor! And you don't understand your own character because you're too busy playing fucking far left progressive cunt. And then, when Danny was killed, run down in the street, and Clara thought that she was taking all the keys to the TARDIS, and then she was chucking them into the volcano, and then she threw them all into the volcano. And then she broke down. What have I done? What have I done? And then the Doctor removed the patch that she thought she had put on the Doctor to knock him out. The Doctor had actually turned it back on her. And so she was the one who was hallucinating. But the Doctor needed to see why she was doing it. And then she said, where do we go from here? I've betrayed you. And he says, go to hell. And she's like, fair enough. Fair enough. And then she starts to leave the TARDIS when he stops it. And he's like, Clara, what are you doing? And she's confused. And he said, we're going to hell. Or heaven. Or wherever you think the afterlife is. And we're going to find Danny. And if we can, we're going to save him. And then he lifts her back up again. These are the times, Clara. These are the moments. And he buoys her back up. With also saying, do you think that I would let you betraying me change anything? Yeah, you let me down. But I'm the doctor and I help people. You don't understand your fucking show! That's why you have this. You don't understand your fucking show. And I know, again, it's a first world issue. But these are shows I've been following since the fucking 80s. And Tom Baker was the first doctor that I ever had. 80s, 90s. We only had one episode in the in the 90s. But all throughout the 80s, then the film, then we have the New Who, and all the series that have gone. And you going, I'm fucking socially awkward. Oh, go fuck yourself. You have no idea who the Doctor is. And that is why Whitaker's getting so much slack. Because maybe Whitaker's a lovely person. Maybe. I mean, I don't think so, judging by the way she comes out with all manner of shit before she'd even taken over the role of the Doctor. It's male gazing. Oh, fuck off. Because she lives in the same bubble that Chibs does and they sniff each other's own farts. It's written by an idiot who's more interested in pushing his far left ideology than entertaining the masses. Everybody. But of course, as I just said, and I agree with Gary here, the BBC had probably just sat there going, just disgusting racist bigots, that all of them probably voted for Trump. This is Britain. Doesn't matter. They would have done. If they're American, they would have voted Trump. That's what they're saying. And they don't care. I'm sorry for getting so impassioned there, but it truly hurts me to just think that all these fandoms being torn down by these pricks. By these absolute pricks. Who have no respect for their audience whatsoever. And then, when the audience bite back, because we're sick and tired. Because if you listen to people who talk about Doctor Who, none of us, not a single one of us, is saying the show's perfect. Every single one of us have said, there is good writing and there's bad writing. There are good episodes and there are bad episodes. But it's how the Doctor conducts themselves and it's how the actors can elevate some poor material which can elevate a show as well. And you get those brilliant episodes that just come and they're mwah. So no one's asking for Whitaker to be perfect or her run to be perfect at all. But it's been so nasty and vindictive and spitefully put together and preachly put together and dismissive of people. Unless, of course, you follow the same political agenda as us. That's why there's been so much bite back to this. But of course, we're just racist and bigots. According to the BBC, no doubt. So it wasn't a time to show that the Doctor isn't human. It was the time to show the Doctor's humanity. But you don't understand that because you don't understand your show. The macro view Strevens added is that we know the story and the stories we're telling, and they're shite. And we will tell that story to the best of our ability, which is shite. So change. You can't get too sidetracked by other stuff like entertainment and fun. Because the truth of any series of anything is that some people like it and some people won't like it. That's the only universal truth you can take. Yeah. I agree that some people will like it and some people will dislike it. And that's why you have ups and downs in the episodes. Oh, I liked this week. I liked last week, so I tuned in this week, but it wasn't that good, so I didn't tune in the week after. people, yeah, but you get a consistency. You get a consistency. That is not a, well, the only thing that is consistent about that is it's fallen off a cliff. That's the only consistency with that. So you can play, some people like it, some people won't. But the truth of the matter is, you've never cared. You've never listened because you bet everything on the anomalous rating of Whitaker's first Curiosity episode and not the true trend of the actual show. Oh, I know, 45 minutes. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but it's a week and a half after the episode, and I'm just, you know, you can call me whatever you want, man, child, baby, whatever. Your prerogative to do so. But this is a show, like I said, that I've loved for 40 odd years, and to see it dismantled in this way because the BBC is no longer an objective show, because the BBC are no longer interested in pushing entertainment. They're only interested in pushing agendas. Fuck the BBC. Stop paying your license fee. Let the BBC burn to the ground. And then we'll see how they pick themselves up after that. They won't. They know they won't. Because they rely on the license fee, because they don't hold themselves accountable for the whole of the British public. They don't represent the whole of the British public. They haven't for a long time now. So I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Links, they're in the description box down below, and I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye for now.